So you've got Montessori education, and then you've got the traditional classroom. It's a huge choice that parents and educators think about all the time. But beyond all the different philosophies, what does the actual research say? Which one really shapes our kids for the better? We're going to dive into the data and find out.
To really get this, we have to start with a pretty shocking question. What if I told you that one of the world's most famous educational models didn't start in some fancy, perfect classroom, but in Roman asylums, working with kids that society had basically labeled unteachable?
Because, believe it or not, that's exactly where this story begins. Today, we are going to unpack that wild history and then look at the hard data comparing Montessori's results directly against traditional schooling. And what the research shows, well, it might just change the way you think about the modern classroom.
So let's start right there with that origin story. It's a piece of the puzzle that, honestly, most people have never even heard of.
Just look at this timeline for a second. Back in the 1890s, Dr. Maria Montessori wasn't trying to change education for everyone. She was one of Italy's very first female doctors, and she was working with institutionalized children, kids who were completely cast aside. She just watched them, She designed these hands-on materials based on what they were interested in, and she saw incredible progress. All of this work then led her to open the first children's home in 1907, applying everything she learned to kids from really poor families.
And this is the part that is so crucial. From the very beginning, her work was radical. It was all built on one core belief, that no child is incapable of learning. Her whole method was designed to unlock the potential in children that, frankly, the rest of the world had already given up on.
Okay, so with that foundation in mind, let's jump ahead to today and really nail down the core ideas of the two models we're comparing.
You can see the split so clearly here. On one side, you've got the Montessori way. It's all about the child. They direct their own learning, they use all these hands-on materials, and they're in classrooms with kids of different ages. The goal is to build a real love of learning, not just chase grades. Then, on the other side, there's the traditional approach we all know. The teacher leads, there's a set curriculum for kids all the same age, and everything is driven by grades and tests to make sure there's academic rigor. I mean, they're two completely different ways of thinking about how kids learn best.
So the big question is, which one actually works better? This is where we get to the fun part. Let's look at the data and see what happens when you put these two models head-to-head in actual studies.
First up, academics. When you look at the studies, a clear pattern emerges. Montessori students consistently do better than their peers in traditional schools, especially in math and language arts. Now, what's interesting is that the research doesn't show a major difference in science, but that advantage in the other core subjects, it's statistically significant.
But what about all the other stuff? The social and emotional skills that are so important. Well, this is where the advantage for Montessori gets even more obvious. The research shows that Montessori kids consistently score higher on things like social skills, empathy, and self-control. It really suggests that the focus on independence and community actually pays off in developing the whole child, not just the academic part.
The numbers tell one story, but what does it actually feel like to be in these schools? Well, when researchers talked to parents, teachers, and even the students themselves, the feedback lined up perfectly. People praised the Montessori approach for creating independent kids who genuinely love to learn. Students actually called it enjoyable. On the flip side, traditional school was valued for its structure and rigor, but some teachers worried it kind of squashed creativity, and students said it could be a high-pressure environment. All right, now we get to what might be the single most important finding in all of this research. It's something scientists are calling the equalizer effect, and believe me, it has huge implications for fairness in education. What does this number mean? Get this. A huge, long-term study found that the link between a family's income and how well a child does in school was twice as strong in traditional schools compared to Montessori schools. Let me say that again. A family's wealth was twice as powerful in predicting a kid's success in a traditional classroom. And you might be wondering, how do they know that for sure? Well, this wasn't just some random survey. We're talking about the gold standard of research. They followed kids for years after they entered a random lottery to get a spot in these high-quality public Montessori schools. And because it was totally random, it created a perfect apples-to-apples comparison between the kids who got in and the kids who didn't. And what they found is just, wow. At age 3, you could see that classic, predictable achievement gap based on family income. No surprise there. But for the kids who won the lottery and went to Montessori, after just 1 year, that gap shrank by 1/3.
And then, by age 5, it was almost gone. The lower-income Montessori kids were performing at the same level as the kids from wealthier families. It basically erased the income achievement gap.
Okay, so we've gone through the history, we've dug into the data. What's the big picture here? What are we supposed to take away from all this? Let's just break it down. The research is pretty clear. Montessori has some major advantages when it comes to fostering independence, building those crucial social-emotional skills, and boosting scores in math and language. And maybe most importantly, it has a massive impact on leveling the playing field for kids from all backgrounds. Now, traditional education strength, it lies in that predictable structure and its clear academic goals, which are designed to prepare students really well for standardized systems.
But we have to talk about the elephant in the room. There is a huge irony here, right? A method that was literally born to serve the most vulnerable children has somehow become a symbol of expensive, private, and exclusive education in a lot of places. And this whole problem of elitism and unequal access, it's a major critique and a real barrier to Montessori reaching its full potential.
And that brings us to the final big question. The research shows both of these systems have real strengths. So could the future of education actually be some kind of hybrid? A model that takes the structure and rigor from traditional schooling and combines it with the child-centered equity powerhouse that is the Montessori method. What would that even look like? And how could it help every single kid? Now that's a question worth thinking about.